Sometimes life changes in the blink of an eye. For me, that moment came on a crisp autumn afternoon when I was sitting on my worn-out porch, staring at another rejection email on my phone. My name is Mark Reynolds, and 6 months ago, I was a successful project manager. Now, I was just another unemployed father trying to keep up with child support payments and figure out what went wrong. Subscribe to see more inspiring stories like this one, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. The October wind rustled through the trees, sending leaves dancing across my small front yard. The forecast had predicted storms later, matching my mood perfectly. The rejection email, my fourth this week, glared back at me from my cracked phone screen. Another, "We regret to inform you," that felt like a punch to the gut. I glanced at the time, 2:45 p.m. In 15 minutes, I needed to pick up Emily, my 10-year-old daughter, from Oakwood Elementary. These daily pickups were the highlight of my life now. The precious moments I got to spend with her since Sarah and I split up. The divorce hadn't been ugly, just sad. Two people realizing they'd grown in different directions. But Emily, she was the light that kept me going. The wind picked up as I walked toward Riverside Park, taking my usual shortcut to the school. The park was usually peaceful this time of day, with its ancient oak trees and winding paths. I'd been cutting through here every day for months, counting the steps, lost in thought about job applications and dwindling savings. That's when I heard it, a sharp crack, followed by a terrified scream that made my blood run cold. I spun around, my heart pounding. Through the trees, I caught a glimpse of something falling. No, someone. A small figure plummeting from one of the tallest oaks, their bright blue backpack spinning through the air like a broken wing. I didn't think. I ran, my feet pounding against the leaf-strewn ground, my body moving faster than I thought possible. Time seemed to slow down, like in those action movies Emily loves. The figure, a young girl, was falling from at least 20 feet up. My mind raced with calculations I didn't have time to complete. 3 seconds. That's all I had. I lunged. Forward, arms outstretched. The impact knocked the wind out of me as we both crashed to the ground. Pain shot through my shoulder as we rolled, my body curling around hers instinctively to protect her from the fall. When we finally stopped, the world was spinning, but I could feel her breathing against my chest. "Are you okay?" I gasped carefully, sitting up and checking her for injuries. She was small, maybe 8 years old, with dark hair and tear-stained cheeks. Her blue backpack lay a few feet away, content scattered across the ground. She nodded, trembling. I think so." Her voice was barely a whisper. "My arm hurts a little." I noticed she was cradling her left arm. "I'm Mark," I said softly, trying to keep her calm while I assessed the situation. "What's your name?" "Lucy," she sniffled. "Lucy Chen. I was trying to get Mr. Whiskers." I followed her gaze up the massive oak tree. Sure enough, a fluffy orange. Cat sat on one of the highest branches, looking down at us with typical feline indifference. "Your cat?" I asked, still checking her for any serious injuries. Her arm was starting to swell, probably sprained, maybe worse. Lucy shook her head. "No, I just saw him up there. He looked stuck, and I thought..." Fresh tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have climbed so high." My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably the school wondering where I was. "Emily, I was going to be late, but I couldn't leave this girl alone, especially not injured." "We need to get you checked out," I said, pulling out my phone. "Is there someone I can call? Your parents?" Lucy's face fell. "My mom's really busy. She's in meetings all day. I'm supposed to be at my after-school program, but..." She glanced guiltily at the cat, which had now decided to casually make its way down the tree with perfect ease. I dialed 911, quickly explaining the situation. While waiting for the ambulance, I sent a quick text to Sarah about being late for... "Emily, As much as it pained me to miss my pickup time, I knew she'd understand. This was an emergency. Lucy sat quietly beside me, occasionally wincing when she moved her arm. I noticed her backpack was designer brand, probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her clothes too were clearly expensive, but there was something lonely in her eyes that reminded me of Emily after the divorce. "Mr. Whiskers is getting down now," I said, trying to distract her from the pain. "Looks like he didn't need help after all." She managed a small smile. "Cats are like that, aren't they? Mom says they're independent like her. That's why she won't let me have one." The sound of approaching sirens filled the air. As the ambulance pulled up to the park entrance, Lucy suddenly grabbed my hand with her good arm. "Will you stay with me?" she asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Just until they check my arm. I don't like hospitals." I thought about Emily waiting. At school, about Sarah's disappointment, about the stack of unpaid bills on my kitchen table. But looking at Lucy's frightened face, I couldn't say no. Sometimes being a father means being there for any child who needs you, not just your own. "Of course," I said, squeezing her hand gently. "I'll stay as long as you need." What I didn't know then was that this simple act of kindness, choosing to stay with a scared little girl, would set in motion a chain of events that would change both our lives forever. Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest choices, and as the ambulance doors closed behind us, I had no idea I'd just taken the first step on an incredible journey. They say the universe has a way of putting you exactly where you need to be. As I sat in the sterile waiting room of St. Michael's Hospital, watching Lucy get checked out by the medical staff, I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to catch the next part of this incredible story. The emergency room buzzed with its usual controlled chaos. Rachel Stevens, a kind-faced nurse with graying hair, had taken one look at Lucy's arm and whisked her away for x-rays. I'd called Sarah again, explaining the situation in more detail. She'd agreed to pick up Emily and even praised me for helping the injured girl, though I could hear the familiar note of exasperation in her voice. "Mr. Reynolds!" Nurse Stevens appeared at my side, her expression professional but warm. "Lucy's asking for you." I followed her through the fluorescent-lit corridor to a small examination room. Lucy sat on the edge of the bed, her arm now properly bandaged and supported by a sling. Her face lit up when she saw me, and something in my chest tightened. She looked so much like Emily at that moment, small, vulnerable, but incredibly brave. "Just a sprain," she announced proudly, as if she'd accomplished something remarkable. "Dr. Martinez says I was really lucky." "You were," I agreed, taking a seat in the plastic chair beside her bed. "Have they reached your mum yet?" Lucy's smile faltered. "They left a message with her assistant. She's in Singapore, or maybe Sydney, I'm not sure." She picked at the edge of her sling with her good hand. "Sometimes it's hard to keep track." Before I could respond, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Rapid footsteps approached, accompanied by urgent voices. The door burst open, and two men in dark suits entered, followed by a woman in hospital administration. "Miss Chen," one of the suits said, his tone clipped and professional. "I'm David Parker, head of your mother's security team. We came as soon as we got the alert." Lucy seemed to shrink into herself, her earlier brightness dimming. "Is my mum coming?" David exchanged a glance with his colleague. "Ms. Chen is currently in transit. She's very concerned and will be here as soon as possible." He turned his attention to me, his gaze sharp and assessing. "And you are Mark Reynolds. I was the one who—" I began, but he cut me off. "Yes, we know. You caught her when she fell." He pulled out a tablet, tapping the screen efficiently. "We'll need you to sign some paperwork. Non-disclosure agreements primarily. Standard procedure." My mind spun. Non-disclosure agreements for helping an injured child. I'm sorry, but I don't understand. Why would I need to sign anything? The second suit stepped forward, his expression equally stern. Miss Chen's safety and privacy are our top priorities. Given her mother's position... It's okay, David, a new voice interrupted. A woman stood in the doorway, her presence immediately commanding attention. She was elegantly dressed in a charcoal grey suit that probably cost more than my car, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. But it was her eyes that caught my attention. They were exactly like Lucy's. "Mom!" Lucy tried to get up but winced at the movement. Victoria Chen moved with graceful efficiency to her daughter's side. Her face a mixture of concern and something else. Guilt, maybe. "Sweetheart, what were you thinking? Climbing trees? You could have been seriously hurt." "I'm sorry," Lucy whispered. "There was this cat." Victoria raised her hand, silencing her daughter's explanation. "We'll discuss this later." She turned to me, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Reynolds, I understand I owe you a debt of gratitude." I shifted uncomfortably under her scrutiny. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly. "They wouldn't have. David, give us the room. All of you." Her tone left no room for argument.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
The suits and hospital staff filed out, leaving us alone with Lucy. Victoria Chen sat on the edge of her daughter's bed, her perfectly manicured fingers straightening Lucy's rumpled collar. "The hospital tells me you stayed with her. Through the X-rays, the examination. You missed picking up your own daughter to do so." I wondered how she knew about Emily, but decided not to ask. Like I said, anyone would have. "Mr. Reynolds," she interrupted, "in my experience, very few people do what's right when there's nothing in it for them." She reached into her designer bag and pulled out a checkbook. "I'd like to compensate you for your time and discretion." My face flushed. "I don't want your money, Miss Chen." "Everyone wants something, Mr. Reynolds." Her pen hovered over the checkbook. "Name your price." I stood up, my hands clenching involuntarily. "With all due respect, I helped your daughter because she needed help. Not everything has a price tag." Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly, the first crack in her composed facade. Lucy watched our exchange with wide eyes, her small hand clutching her mother's sleeve. "Mom," she said softly, "Mark was really nice. He told me stories while we waited about his daughter Emily and how she wants to be a veterinarian because she loves animals too." Something flickered across Victoria's face. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. She closed the checkbook, sliding it back into her bag. "I see." She stood, smoothing her immaculate suit. "Mr. Reynolds, would you join me for coffee? There's a matter I'd like to discuss with you." I glanced at my watch. Emily would be wondering where I was, even though Sarah had surely explained. But something in Victoria Chen's expression told me this wasn't a request I should refuse. "Of course," I said. Little did I know that this conversation would lead to an offer that would test everything I believed about myself, about wealth, and about what it means to be a parent. As I followed Victoria Chen out of the hospital room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into something much bigger than a simple chat over coffee. The hospital cafeteria wasn't quite what I'd expected for a conversation with one of the wealthiest women in the country. Victoria Chen sat across from me, her Italian leather handbag looking comically out of place next to the plastic coffee, in cups and formica table. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications to see how this incredible story unfolds. "Your background check is quite interesting, Mr. Reynolds," she said, stirring her untouched coffee. 15 years in project management, excellent performance reviews. Then 6 months ago, everything changed." I stiffened. "You ran a background check on me. I run background checks on everyone who comes within 10 feet of my daughter. Her tone was matter-of-fact. You lost your job when Maxwell Industries downsized. Divorce followed shortly after. Now you're behind on child support and about to lose your house. The fluorescent light suddenly felt too bright, too exposing. Is this where you offer to solve all my problems in exchange for my silence about Lucy? Victoria's lips curved into something almost like a smile. No, Mr. Reynolds, this is where I offer you a job. I blinked. A job? Lucy needs someone I can trust. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. Someone who puts her safety above everything else. Someone who sees her as a child first and a Chen second. You want me to be her bodyguard? I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. I want you to be her guardian when I can't be. Victoria's composed facade cracked. Slightly. Today wasn't the first time Lucy's tried something dangerous because she was lonely. My security team is excellent at keeping threats out, but they're not. She paused, searching for words. They're not parents, I finished for her. Exactly. She pulled out a folder I hadn't noticed before. The position would include a substantial salary, full benefits, and housing in the guest house of my estate. Your daughter Emily would be welcome to stay with you during your custody times. Both girls would attend Oakwood Elementary together. My head spun. The offer was incredible, too incredible. Why me? You don't know anything about me beyond what's in that background check. Victoria's eyes met mine. I know you stayed with my daughter when there was nothing in it for you. I know you refused money for helping her. And I know that when you thought I was going to buy your silence, you were ready to walk away. She slid the folder toward me. In my world, Mr. Reynolds, those qualities are rarer than you might think. I opened the folder and my breath caught. The salary was more than triple what I'd made at Maxwell Industries. The benefits package included full medical, dental, and college funds for both girls. It seemed too good to be true. There's a catch, I said, closing the folder. There's always a catch. Victoria didn't deny it. The position comes with complications. Lucy's father isn't in the picture, but his family has been trying to gain custody for years. They believe they have a claim to the Chen fortune through her. My security measures aren't just about keeping random threats away. They're about protecting her from people who would use her to get to me. The non-disclosure agreements, I realized, they're not just about privacy. Nothing in my world is just about one thing, Mr. Reynolds. She pulled out her phone, checking something briefly before continuing. Right now, Lucy has no one she can truly trust except me, and I'm not there enough. She needs someone who will put her first, who will be there for the small moments, not just the emergencies. I thought about Lucy's face when she talked about her mom being in Singapore or Sydney, about the way she climbed a tree to help a cat, maybe just to feel less alone. What about Emily? I asked. This would affect her life too. Emily would have full access to the same opportunities as Lucy. Private tutors, extracurricular, activities, anything she's interested in. The girls are close in age. They might even become friends. Victoria's expression softened slightly. I'm not asking you to choose between helping my daughter and taking care of yours. I'm offering you a way to do both. A message buzzed on my phone. Sarah asking when I'd pick up Emily. The weight of my current situation pressed down on me. The unpaid bills, the dwindling savings, the look in Emily's eyes when I had to say no to new school supplies. I need time to think about it, I said, to talk to my daughter and my ex-wife. Victoria nodded, standing gracefully. You have 24 hours. After that, I'll need to pursue other options. She pulled out a business card, placing it precisely on the table. My private number is on the back. Whatever you decide, Mr. Reynolds, thank you for helping Lucy today. As she walked away, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor, I sat staring at the folder. Inside was the solution to all my problems, wrapped in complications I couldn't begin to imagine. But I kept thinking about Lucy's smile when she talked about the cat, about her bravery in the hospital, about how much she reminded me of Emily. Sometimes the biggest decisions in life come disguised as simple choices. As I gathered my things to finally go pick up my daughter, I wondered if saving Lucy from that fall had been more than just a random act of kindness. Maybe it was the universe's way of saving me too. The drive to Sarah's house felt longer than usual, Victoria Chen's offer weighing heavily on my mind. The evening sky had turned a deep purple, and streetlights flickered to life along Cedar Street, casting long shadows across familiar neighborhoods that suddenly felt temporary. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications to catch the next part of this life-changing story. Emily was waiting on the porch when I pulled up, her backpack clutched to her chest. Sarah stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. I'd texted her about needing to talk, and she knew me well enough to know it was serious. "Daddy!" Emily ran to the car, her ponytail bouncing. "Mom said you saved someone today, like a superhero." I managed to smile, catching her in a hug. "Not exactly a superhero, sweetheart. Just right place, right time." I looked up at Sarah. "Can we talk?" She nodded, gesturing inside. "Emily, honey, why don't you go pack your overnight bag while I talk to your father?" Once Emily was upstairs, Sarah led me to the kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd shared countless meals when we were married. It looked different now, painted a soft yellow instead of the blue I remembered. Change, always change. "So," she said, leaning against the counter, "what's going on, Mark?" I told her everything. About Lucy's fall, Victoria Chen's background check, and the job offer. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. "It sounds too good to be true," she said finally. "A wealthy CEO just happens to offer you a perfect job after you save her daughter. Life doesn't work that way, doesn't it?" I spread the contents of Victoria's folder on the counter. "Look at this, Sarah. We wouldn't have to worry about money anymore. Emily could have everything we've wanted for her. The best education, opportunities we couldn't even dream of before." Sarah picked up the contract, scanning it with the careful attention she'd developed as a paralegal. "What's the real cost, Mark? Rich people like that, they don't just hand out dream jobs to strangers." "She's not looking for a stranger," I argued. "She's looking for someone who cares about her daughter's welfare more than her money. Someone who can protect Lucy while being a parent figure." "And what about Emily? Have you thought about how this would affect her, moving to a new home, being thrown into this wealthy world?" Sarah set down the contract. "What if it doesn't work out? We've finally got her adjusted to the divorce, to our new normal." Before I could respond, Emily's voice carried down the stairs. "Dad, can you help me reach my science book? It's on the high shelf." "Go," Sarah said softly. "Help her pack. Think about what I said." Upstairs, Emily's room was a chaos of books and stuffed animals. She stood on tiptoe, pointing to her science textbook on the top shelf. As I reached for it, I noticed the worn edges of her backpack, the scuff marks on her once white sneakers, little signs of the things we couldn't afford to replace. "Dad?" Emily looked up at me, her eyes serious. "Are we moving?" I sat on her bed, patting the space next to me. "Maybe. How would you feel about that?" She shrugged, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. "Would I still see Mom?" "Of course. You'd still have your same schedule with Mom. We'd just be living in a different house, a bigger one with a huge yard." I hesitated. "And there would be another girl there, about your age. Lucy, the one I helped today." Emily's eyes lit up slightly. "Really? Would she be like a sister?" "Not exactly. More like a friend you'd live with sometimes. Her mom offered me a job helping take care of Lucy. I watched her face carefully. But I won't take it if you're not okay with it. Would I have to change schools? No, you'd still go to Oakwood. Lucy goes there too. Emily was quiet for a moment, thinking, is Lucy nice? I smiled, remembering how she'd worried about the cat even after falling. Yes, she's very nice, and I think she could use a friend. Like how I needed friends after you and Mum split up. Sometimes your children's perception hits you like a punch to the gut. Yeah, honey, kind of like that. Emily nodded decisively. Then we should help her. You always say helping people is important. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. When did you get so wise, kiddo? Back downstairs, Sarah was still reading through the contract. She looked up. As we entered, her expression softened by whatever she saw in my face. Emily's okay with it, I said quietly. Sarah sighed. I saw the salary mark. It would more than cover child support. Give Emily opportunities we've only dreamed of, but... She bit her lip. Just promise me you'll be careful. Rich people's problems tend to be bigger than regular people's problems. I pulled out Victoria's business card. I have until tomorrow to decide. You've already decided, Sarah said, a hint of her old affection in her voice. I know that look. Just protect our daughter, whatever you're getting into. That night, after dropping Emily back at Sarah's, we agreed she should stay in her familiar bed until things were settled. I sat in my quiet house and stared at Victoria's card. The sensible thing would be to walk away, to keep looking for normal jobs with normal complications. But I kept thinking about Lucy's lonely eyes, about Emily's wisdom, about chances that might never come again. Sometimes being a parent means taking risks to give your children a better life. Sometimes it means becoming someone else's guardian when they need one most. I picked up my phone and dialed Victoria's number. Mr. Reynolds, she answered on the first ring. Have you made your decision? Yes, I said, looking around at my small house with its unpaid bills and fading dreams. I'll take the job, but I have conditions. I'm listening. Emily's happiness and safety come first, equal to Lucy's. And I need to know everything. All the threats, all the complications, no surprises. There was a pause on the other end. Agreed to your first condition. As for the second, Victoria's voice turned grave. There are some things you need to know about Lucy's father's family. Things that might make you reconsider. As she began to explain, I realized Sarah was right. Rich people's problems were bigger than regular people's problems. But sometimes, the biggest problems come with the most important rewards. Victoria's voice remained steady as she spoke, but there was an undercurrent of tension I hadn't heard before. Lucy's father, Alexander Kane, came from old money, the kind of wealth that breeds entitlement and ruthlessness in equal measure. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to catch the next part of this incredible journey. I sat at my kitchen table, phone pressed to my ear, taking notes as Victoria unfolded a story that sounded more like a thriller novel than real life. The kitchen clock ticked past midnight, but sleep was the furthest thing from my mind. When I met Alex, I was just starting Chen Innovations, Victoria continued. He invested in my company, became my partner in both business and life. Everything seemed perfect until... She paused, and I heard ice cubes clink against glass. Until I discovered what the Kane family really wanted, which was control. They wanted to merge Chen Innovations with Kane Industries, but under their terms. When I refused, things got ugly. Alex threatened to take everything, including my company. What he didn't know was that I had evidence of his family's illegal dealings, money laundering, corporate espionage, things that would destroy their empire. I rubbed my temples, trying to process it all. What happened? I used the evidence as leverage for a clean break. Alex signed away all rights to both the company and any future claims. 2 months later, I discovered I was pregnant with Lucy. Victoria's voice softened at her daughter's name. I kept her existence hidden from the Canes for almost 4 years. But they found out. Yes. And they've been trying to get to her ever since. They see her as their key back into Chen Innovations. If they could gain custody. She didn't. Need to finish the thought. I thought about Lucy's lonely eyes, her brave smile in the hospital. How bad could it get? The Canes once bankrupted a man for simply outbidding them on a company acquisition. His family ended up in witness protection. Victoria's voice turned hard. They destroy people, Mr. Reynolds. It's what they do. And now I'm painting a target on my back, on Emily's back. I should have felt scared, but instead I felt something else, anger. Why are you telling me all this? Most people would run. Because I need you to understand what you're walking into, and because... She hesitated. Because Lucy likes you. She hasn't stopped talking about you since the hospital, about how you made her feel safe. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the heavy knowledge I now carried. I packed my meager belongings into boxes, each item a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. The coffee maker Sarah had given me for our first Christmas. Emily's finger paintings from kindergarten, photos of happier times. A knock at the door made me freeze. It was barely 7 a.m., too early for casual visitors. I approached cautiously, Victoria's warnings fresh in my mind. Mr. Reynolds, a familiar voice called out. David Parker, Victoria's head of security, stood on my porch with 2 other men. We're here to help with the move. I opened the door, noting their efficient movements, the way their eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. That was fast. Ms. Chen believes in being proactive, David said, entering the house. We've already swept the guest house for surveillance devices and upgraded the security system. We'll need to do the same with your vehicle and personal electronics. As the security team worked, David pulled me aside. There's something else you should know. We've detected unusual activity around Oakwood Elementary. Someone's been watching the school. My heart skipped. The Canes? He nodded grimly. They know about Lucy's accident. They know you helped her. It won't take them long to find out about Emily. I thought about my daughter, innocent and unaware, probably getting ready for school right now. Should I be worried? We have people watching both girls. Nothing will happen to them. David's expression softened slightly. But you need to understand, from this moment on, your life changes. Everything you do, everywhere you go, security comes first. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of activity. The security team packed my belongings with military precision while teaching me protocols and procedures. Always vary your route to school. Never post on social media. Check for tails when driving. Trust no one outside the approved list. By noon, we were ready to leave. I stood in my empty living room, saying goodbye to the life I'd known. The walls seemed to echo with memories. Emily's first steps, late night, talks with Sarah, the sound of laughter and tears and everything in between. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Lucy's excited to meet Emily properly. She's been redecorating the guest house all morning. The message brought a smile to my face. Despite everything, 2 little girls, both dealing with their own kinds of loneliness, about to become part of each other's lives. The drive to the Chen estate took us through increasingly affluent neighborhoods until we turned onto a private road that wound through manicured grounds. The main house appeared first, a modern masterpiece of glass and stone that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. The guest house, while smaller, was still larger than any home I'd ever lived in. As we pulled up, I saw 2 small, Figures waiting by the door, Lucy, her arm still in its sling, and beside her Emily, who had been dropped off by Sarah. They were already deep in conversation, Lucy gesturing excitedly with her good arm, while Emily nodded enthusiastically. "They seem to be getting along," David observed. I watched the girls, already forming a connection that would soon be tested, in ways none of us could imagine. Yeah, they do. What I didn't know then was that this moment, watching my daughter and Lucy together for the first time, would become a memory I'd cling to in the dark days ahead. Because the Canes weren't just watching, they were planning, and they were about to show us just how far they would go to get what they wanted. Life in the guest house quickly settled into a new kind of normal. The girls bonded faster than any of us expected, their laughter echoing through the spacious rooms that still didn't quite feel like home. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to see what happens next in this incredible story. It had been 2 weeks since the move. Lucy's arm was healing well, and she seemed to bloom with Emily's friendship. My daughter, always outgoing, had taken Lucy under her wing, introducing her to her friends at school and including her in everything. The loneliness I'd first seen in Lucy's eyes was fading, replaced by a spark of joy that made Victoria smile every time she saw it. That particular morning started like any other. I was making breakfast. Pancakes had become our morning ritual, while the girls sat at the kitchen island, giggling over something on Lucy's tablet. "Dad," Emily called out, "can Lucy sleep over on Friday? Please, we want to build a blanket, fort and watch movies." I flipped a pancake, buying time. Security protocols had become second nature, but sleepovers weren't in the manual. "We'll have to check with your mom and Ms. Chen." "Mom already said yes," Emily replied quickly. "And Lucy's mom?" She trailed off, looking at her friend. Lucy's smile dimmed slightly. "She's in Dubai until next week. But David said it's okay if you approve it." I placed plates in front of them, studying Lucy's expression. Victoria's business trips had become more frequent lately, each one seeming to last longer than the last. The weight of her absence showed in the slight droop of Lucy's shoulders, despite Emily's constant companionship. "Tell you what," I said, "if David clears it with security, we can do the sleepover. Maybe even make it a movie marathon." Their squeals of excitement were interrupted by a knock at the door. David stood there, his usual composed expression replaced by something more urgent. "Mr. Reynolds, a word." I followed him outside, noting the increased security presence around the grounds. Something was wrong. "We've intercepted some concerning communications," David said without preamble. "The Canes are making moves. They've filed for an emergency custody hearing, claiming Victoria is an unfit mother due to her frequent absences." My stomach dropped. Can they do that? "They're trying, but that's not the worst part." He handed me a tablet displaying security camera footage. This was taken outside Oakwood Elementary yesterday. The footage showed a man in an expensive suit talking to a teacher during recess. As I watched, he pointed toward the playground where Lucy and Emily were playing. "Who is he?" "James Kane, Alexander's brother. He's their chief legal strategist." David's jaw tightened. He was asking questions about Lucy's home life, her relationship with you and Emily. He's building a case. I thought about the girls inside, innocent and happy in their blanket fort plans. Does Victoria know? She's cutting her trip short, but David hesitated. The Canes might use that as further evidence. They're painting a picture of an absent mother who's delegated parental duties to an unemployed stranger. While they were perfectly happy to stay away for 8 years, I muttered. They were waiting for the right moment. Lucy's accident, your involvement, it gave them an opening. David took back the tablet. "We're increasing security at the school and here. No one gets near either of the girls without clearance." I ran a hand through my hair, frustration building. They're just kids. They shouldn't have to live like this. No, they shouldn't. David's expression softened marginally. But right now, keeping them safe is all that matters. Victoria wants you to know, whatever happens, whatever they try, she'll make sure you and Emily are protected. Inside, the girls were still chattering about their sleepover plans, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering around them. I watched them, these two innocent souls, brought together by chance and circumstance, and felt a fierce surge of protectiveness. "Dad?" Emily looked up, concern crossing her face. "Are you okay? You look worried." I forced a smile. "Just grown-up stuff, sweetheart. Nothing for you to worry about." But even as I said it, I knew that soon their peaceful world would be shattered. That afternoon, while the girls were at their after-school art class, with two plainclothes security guards watching, I met with Victoria via video call. She looked exhausted, the polish of her usual appearance slightly dimmed by worry. "The Canes won't stop," she said, rubbing her temples. "They've already lined up character witnesses, former employees, social workers, even Lucy's teachers. They're building a narrative that I'm prioritizing business over my daughter." "But you're doing all this for her," I protested. "Building your company, securing her future. Try explaining that to a family court judge who sees a mother who's barely home." Victoria's voice cracked slightly. "They're going to use you against me too. Suggest that I'm delegating my parental responsibilities to an unqualified stranger with financial problems." I thought about Lucy's face lighting up when she saw me each morning, about how she and Emily had become inseparable. "What do you need me to do?" "For now, keep doing what you're doing. Be there for Lucy. Keep both girls safe." She paused, something shifting in her expression. "But Mark, if things go badly, if it looks like they might win." "They won't," I said firmly. "If they do," she continued, "I need to know you'll protect her, whatever it takes." The weight of her words hung in the air. Whatever it takes. I thought about the Canes, about their power and ruthlessness, about what they might do to get what they wanted. "I promise," I said, meaning it more than any promise I'd ever made. What I didn't know then was how soon that promise would be tested. Because the Canes weren't just filing legal papers and asking questions. They were about to show us exactly how far they would go to get Lucy, and nothing, not Victoria's money, not David's security, not even my promises would be enough to stop what was coming. The sleepover Friday became our last moment of peace. The girls had built their blanket fort in the living room, fairy lights twinkling inside like captured stars. The sound of their giggles mixed with the movie soundtrack, creating a bubble of innocence I desperately wanted to protect. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to catch the next part of this life-changing story. Victoria had returned from Dubai late that night. Instead of heading to the main house, she joined us, sitting cross-legged in the fort with the girls, her expensive suit traded for borrowed sweatpants. For a few precious hours, we were just a normal family, enjoying a normal evening. "Mom," Lucy whispered as the movie ended, her head resting on Victoria's shoulder, "can't you stay home more? Like this?" The pain that flashed across Victoria's face made my heart ache. "I'm trying, sweetheart. Things are complicated right now, but I promise." Her words were cut off by the sharp trill of her phone. David's name flashed on the screen. She stepped outside to take the call, but through the window, I could see her posture stiffen, her free hand clenching into a fist. When she returned, her face was carefully composed, but I could see the fear beneath the surface. "Girls, why don't you start getting ready for bed? Mr. Reynolds and I need to discuss something." Once they were upstairs, Victoria's calm facade cracked. "They've done it. The Canes have convinced a judge to grant them a temporary visitation order. They're demanding to see Lucy tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" My voice rose before I caught myself, glancing toward the stairs. That's too soon. We need time to prepare her. We don't have time. Victoria paced the room, her borrowed sweatpants somehow making her seem more vulnerable. The judge bought their argument that I've been deliberately keeping Lucy from her paternal family. If we refuse the visitation, they'll use it against us in the custody hearing. I thought about Lucy upstairs, probably braiding Emily's hair, or sharing secrets, unaware that her world was about to shift again. What do they really want? This can't just be about seeing her. They want to establish a connection, document every interaction. They'll use her reactions, her words, anything they can to build their case. Victoria stopped pacing, her eyes meeting mine. Mark, I need you to be there. The visitation is supposed to be supervised anyway, and I trust you to watch for things I might miss. The next morning dawned grey and cold, matching our mood. Telling Lucy about the visitation had been heart-wrenching. Her face had crumpled, tears welling up as she clung to Victoria. I don't want to meet them, she'd sobbed. Why can't they just leave us alone? Emily, showing wisdom beyond her years, had hugged her friend fiercely. It's okay, my dad will be there. He won't let anything bad happen. Now, standing in the formal living room of the main house, I watched Lucy fidget with her dress, a simple blue thing that Victoria had chosen, to make her look appropriately casual. David and his team had swept the room for recording devices 3 times. The doorbell rang exactly at noon. James Kane entered first, every inch the polished lawyer in his tailored suit. Behind him came an older couple, Richard and Eleanor. Kane, Lucy's paternal grandparents. They looked exactly like what you'd expect old money to look like, perfectly groomed, impeccably dressed, and radiating a sense of entitlement that set my teeth on edge. Lucy, Eleanor stepped forward, arms outstretched. My darling girl, we've waited so long to meet you. Lucy shrank back, pressing against Victoria's side. I moved slightly, positioning myself between them and the girls, a movement that didn't go unnoticed by James Kane. Mr. Reynolds, he smiled, all teeth and no warmth. How protective of you. I trust you understand this is a family matter? Mr. Reynolds is here as Lucy's authorized guardian. Victoria cut in smoothly. As per the judge's order, all visitations must be supervised. Of course. Richard Kane's voice was deep, cultured. We wouldn't want anything inappropriate to occur. The next 2 hours were excruciating. The Kanes asked Lucy questions about school, her hobbies, her life with Victoria. Each answer was carefully noted by James in a small leather notebook. They produced gifts, expensive toys and clothes that Lucy accepted reluctantly under Victoria's encouraging nod. But it was their subtle digs that made my blood boil. Comments about how lonely the house must be with Victoria always traveling. Questions about whether Lucy wouldn't prefer a more stable family environment. References to her father that made Lucy's eyes fill with tears. I watched Eleanor Kane especially, noting how her perfectly manicured hand would rest possessively on Lucy's shoulder, how her questions seemed designed to emphasize Victoria's absences. Every interaction felt calculated, performed for an invisible audience that would later judge Victoria's fitness as a mother. Finally, mercifully, the time was up. As they prepared to leave, James Kane paused beside me. You know, he said quietly, there's still time to choose the right side in this, Mr. Reynolds. The Kanes reward loyalty generously. Think about your daughter's future. I met his gaze steadily. I am thinking about her future. And Lucy's. That's why I'm exactly where I need to be. His smile turned cold. We'll see. After they left, Lucy ran straight to her room in the guest house where Emily was waiting. Victoria stood in the empty living room, looking more shaken than I'd ever seen her. They're going to take her, she whispered. They're going to use every moment of this visit against me. Did you see how they got her to talk about the business trips, about the times I've missed school events? I put a hand on her shoulder. Hey, look at me. They didn't win today. Lucy showed them exactly where her loyalty lies. But for how long? Victoria's voice cracked. They'll keep coming, keep pushing. They'll use their money, their influence, everything they have. And one day, they'll learn that some things can't be bought, I said firmly. Lucy knows who loves her, who protects her, who's really on her side. What I didn't say was how James Cain's threat had chilled me, because looking into his eyes, I'd seen something beyond the polished lawyer facade, something cruel and calculating that made me realize this was just the beginning. That night, I checked on the girls one last time before bed. They were curled up together in Lucy's room, having refused to be separated after the visit. Emily had her arm protectively around her friend, both of them finally peaceful in sleep. My phone buzzed, a text from David. Security breach detected at the school. Files accessed, both hard copy and digital. I stared at the message, my heart racing. The Cains weren't just gathering ammunition for a custody battle. They were building something bigger, something worse, and we were running out of time to stop them. The morning after the visitation, I found myself in Victoria's home office, surrounded by screens displaying security footage. David was methodically going through every frame of the Cains' visit, looking for something we might have missed. If you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications to catch every part of this intense story. There, Victoria pointed to one of the screens. When Eleanor touched Lucy's shoulder, did you see how Lucy flinched? I nodded grimly. They'll try to say she's uncomfortable around everyone, that it's a result of your parenting. They're building a narrative, David added, pausing the footage. Every interaction, every question was choreographed for maximum impact. He turned to face us, but that's not our biggest concern right now. The school breach was extensive. Victoria's fingers drummed against her desk. What exactly did they access? Everything. Academic records, counseling notes, attendance logs, but they focused heavily on documenting Lucy's interactions with Emily. David pulled up another screen showing a list of accessed files. They're particularly interested in their friendship. My stomach churned. Why Emily? Because she's your weakness, Victoria said softly, and by extension mine. The Cains know I trust you with Lucy, that the girls have become inseparable. They'll try to use that. Before we could discuss further, a commotion erupted outside. Through the window, I saw Lucy and Emily running across the lawn, their faces flushed with excitement. Anna Martinez, their art teacher, followed at a more sedate pace, carrying what looked like a large canvas. The girls finished their joint art project, Victoria explained, a rare smile softening her features. They've been working on it for weeks. We watched as they set up the canvas on the lawn. It was a sprawling piece. A treehouse perched in a massive oak with two small figures sitting in it, sharing what looked like secrets. The detail was impressive for their age, but it was the joy on their faces as they presented it that made my heart ache. They deserve better than this, I said, turning back to the security footage, better than being pawns in the Cains game. Victoria's phone buzzed, her lawyer. As she took the call, her expression darkened. When she hung up, she looked like she'd aged years in minutes. They're pushing for overnight visits now, she said, her voice hollow. Claiming Lucy needs to bond with her paternal family in a more natural setting. That's not going to happen, I started, but Victoria held up a hand. There's more. They're also requesting a psychological evaluation, not just of Lucy, but of her entire support system, including you and Emily. The implications hit me like a physical blow. They would dig into everything. My divorce, my financial troubles, my ability to care for both girls. They would scrutinize Emily's adjustment to our new life, look for Any sign of stress or trauma they could use? They can't do this, I protested. Emily's not part of the custody battle. She's innocent in all this. The Canes don't care about innocent, David said grimly. They care about winning. Outside, the girls had finished setting up their artwork and were now sprawled on the grass, giggling over something on Lucy's tablet. The sight of them, so carefree despite everything, made my resolve strengthen. So what do we do? Victoria stood, moving to the window. We fight, but we need to be smart about it. The Canes have money and influence, but they also have weaknesses. We just need to find them. I might have something, David interjected, pulling up another screen. Remember how they accessed the school records? They left a trail. The breach originated from a private server registered to Kane Industries. Can we prove it? Victoria asked sharply. Not yet, but if we could. He let the implication hang. It would show they're willing to break the law to get what they want, I finished. But we'd need more than just digital evidence. Victoria turned from the window, her business face firmly in place. Then we'll get more. David, I want everything. You can find on the Canes' recent activities. Mark, we need to prepare the girls for what's coming. They can't be blindsided. I glanced outside again, but the girls had disappeared, probably to show their art teacher more of their projects. How do you tell children that they're being watched, that everything they do could be used against us? We don't, Victoria said firmly. We tell them that sometimes adults make things complicated, but that we're all going to protect each other, that no matter what happens, we're in this together. As if on cue, Lucy's voice floated through the window, calling for her mother. Victoria's face softened instantly, the businesswoman replaced by a mother who just wanted to see her daughter's art. Go, I said. Be with them. David and I will start working on this. After Victoria left, David turned to me. There's something else, something I haven't told Victoria yet. He pulled up a final screen, surveillance photos of a man watching the girls at school. This man isn't just gathering information, he's studying patterns, routines. This looks more like preparation, I finished, my blood running cold. They're planning something. David nodded grimly. We've upgraded security again, but the Canes have resources we can't match. And if they're desperate enough, he didn't need to finish the thought. We both knew what desperate people with power were capable of. That evening, as I watched the girls work on homework at the kitchen table, I felt the weight of what was coming pressing down on me. Lucy was explaining a math problem to Emily, their heads bent together over the textbook, while Emily doodled little encouraging notes in the margins. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Emily mentioned the psychological evaluation. We need to talk. I stepped outside to call her, watching through the window as the girls continued their homework, unaware of the forces gathering around. In them. Mark. Sarah's voice was tight with concern. What exactly have you gotten our daughter into? As I tried to explain to make her understand why we couldn't back down now, I saw a shadow move at the edge of the property. Probably just security doing their rounds, but my nerves were on high alert. The Canes were coming for Lucy, and they wouldn't care who got hurt in the process. The question was, how far would we go to stop them? The conversation with Sarah lasted well into the night. I paced the guest house's back porch, trying to help her understand while keeping my own fears in check. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to catch the next intense part of this story. I should pull Emily out, Sarah said, her voice trembling. If these people are as dangerous as you say. She's safer here, I argued. Victoria's security team is the best, and pulling her out now would devastate both girls. I paused, watching the security lights sweep across the manicured lawn. Plus, it might be exactly what the Canes want, to isolate Lucy. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Mark, be honest with me. Is this worth it? Putting our daughter in the middle of someone else's war? Before I could answer, a scream pierced the night air. I dropped the phone, running inside. The girls. Homework was still spread across the kitchen table, but they were gone. Lucy, Emily. Panic clawed at my throat as I raced through the house. Then I heard giggling from upstairs, followed by Lucy's voice. "No fair! You can't tickle someone with a flashlight!" I found them in Lucy's room, blankets draped over chairs to form a makeshift tent, flashlights creating dancing shadows on the walls. Both girls looked up guiltily at my entrance. "Sorry, Dad," Emily said, recognizing my panic. "We were just practicing for the school play. We're supposed to act scared." I sagged against the doorframe, relief making my knees weak. "Next time, warn me before you practice screaming, okay?" Back outside, I retrieved my phone. Sarah was still on the line, having heard everything. "They sound happy," she said softly. "They are. Despite everything, they've become real friends, family even." I took a deep breath. "I know you're scared, Sarah. I am too. But I also know that walking away now would teach Emily the wrong lesson about standing up for people you care about." Another pause, longer this time. "Fine, but I want daily updates. And the moment, the second, you think she's in real danger, I'll get her out myself," I promised. The next morning brought new complications. Victoria called an emergency meeting in her office. David was already there, along with a man I didn't recognize, short, balding, with thick glasses and nervous hands. "This is Harold Fletcher," Victoria introduced. "He worked for Kane Industries until 6 months ago. He has information we need to hear." Harold cleared his throat. "I was in their cybersecurity division. The school breach, that wasn't just about gathering information. They planted something in the system, a backdoor program that lets them monitor all communications, including the security protocols." David cursed under his breath. "They can track the girls' movements. Worse," Harold adjusted his glasses, "they can manipulate the school's emergency systems. Fire alarms, lockdown protocols, everything." The implications hit me like a physical blow. "They're planning something at the school." Victoria's face was stone. "The psychological evaluation is scheduled for next week. If they can manufacture a crisis, they could make it look like the school isn't safe for Lucy," I finished. "That she needs a more stable environment." "We need to pull the girls out," David said. "No." Victoria's voice was firm. "That's what they want. We need to beat them at their own game." She turned to Harold. "Can you help us?" He nodded nervously. "I kept records, emails, memos, proof of illegal surveillance, but if the Kanes find out I'm talking, we'll protect you," Victoria assured him. "David, get Mr. Fletcher set up in a secure location. I want everything he has analyzed by tonight." After they left, Victoria slumped in her chair, the mask of confidence slipping. "I'm missing something. The Kanes are too smart to risk everything on a school incident. There has to be more." I thought about Lucy and Emily, probably getting ready for school right now, unaware of the schemes swirling around them. What if that's not their real plan? What if they want us focused on the school while they do something else? Victoria's head snapped up. "The custody hearing, it's in 3 weeks, but..." She grabbed her phone, dialing quickly. After a brief conversation, her face went pale. "They've moved for an emergency hearing tomorrow morning." "They can't do that without cause," I protested. "They're claiming new evidence of endangerment." Victoria's laugh was bitter. "Apparently, someone anonymously reported seeing Lucy in emotional distress during our last visitation. I remembered Eleanor Kane's possessive touch, James Kane's careful notes. They planned this from the start. The visitation was just theater for their report, which means the school plan is a backup," I finished. "They're hitting us from all angles, hoping something sticks." Victoria stood abruptly. "I need to call my lawyers, the girls." "I'll handle the girls," I said. "You focus on the hearing." But when I returned to the guest house, I found it empty. A note on the kitchen table made my heart stop. "Going to get breakfast with Grandma Eleanor. She surprised us at drop-off. Back soon, Lucy." Below it, in Emily's messy handwriting, "Don't worry, Dad. Lucy's grandma seems nice." My hands shook as I called David. The Canes hadn't just found our weakness. They'd walked right through the front door of the school and taken it. "Get Victoria," I said when he answered. "The Canes have the girls, and I think I know why they really wanted those school records. Because what better way to prove a mother unfit than to show she couldn't even keep her child safe at school? And what better leverage than having both girls before the emergency hearing? The game had changed, and now we were playing for keeps. The next hour was chaos. Victoria's security team mobilized while she called in every favor she had with local law enforcement. I stood in the school's front office, watching security footage with David, my heart pounding. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications to catch the next part of this intense story as it unfolds. "There," David pointed to the screen. The footage showed Eleanor Kane approaching the girls in the school's drop-off zone. Her smile was warm, grandmother-like, as she bent to speak to them. Lucy hesitated, but Emily, sweet, trusting Emily, smiled back. The next frame showed them climbing into a black SUV. How did this happen? Victoria's voice cracked as she joined us. "We had protocols, security." "They used our own rules against us," David explained grimly. "Eleanor Kane was on the approved family list from the visitation order. The school had no reason to stop her." My phone buzzed. Sarah. I stepped away to answer, dreading the conversation. "Mark?" Her voice was tight with panic. "The school just called. Emily never made it to class." "I know." I had to force the words out. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. The Canes." "The who? Mark, what's happening? Where is our daughter?" Before I could respond, Victoria touched my arm. "Let me," she said, taking the phone. "Mrs. Reynolds, this is Victoria Chen. Please listen carefully. A car is already on its way to pick you up. We're going to find the girls, but I need you to trust us right now." While Victoria explained the situation to Sarah, David pulled me aside. "We've got a hit on the SUV's license plate. They're heading north on the interstate." "The Kane estate," I realized. "They're taking them to Richard and Eleanor's house." "Which is exactly what we can't prove without compromising our surveillance," David said frustratingly. "They're smart. They'll claim Eleanor was taking the girls for breakfast with Lucy's grandparents, something completely allowed under the visitation order. Unless... An idea struck me. Emily wasn't part of that order. They had no right to take her. Victoria, finishing her call with Sarah, caught the end of our conversation. "We can use that. In fact..." Her eyes lit up with a dangerous gleam. "We're going to use everything." Within minutes, Victoria's plan was in motion. While her legal team prepared for the emergency hearing, now just hours away, David's security team tracked the SUV. Sarah arrived, pale but determined, and Victoria quickly brought her into the strategy. "They think they can use our children against us," Victoria said, her voice hard. "They're about to learn how wrong they are." The Kane estate was exactly what you'd expect. A sprawling mansion set behind iron gates, old money oozing from every manicured hedge and carved column. By the time we arrived, police cars had already surrounded the property, their lights flashing against the morning sun. James Kane met us at the gate, his lawyer's smile firmly in place. "This is quite unnecessary," he said smoothly. "The girls are simply having breakfast with their grandparents, as per the visitation order." "Which only applies to Lucy." Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite her fear. "You had no right to take my daughter." "Miss Emily came willingly." Eleanor Kane appeared behind her son, still playing the doting grandmother. We would never dream of forcing. After a brief conversation, her face went pale. They've moved for an emergency hearing tomorrow morning. They can't do that without cause, I protested. They're claiming new evidence of endangerment. Victoria's laugh was bitter. Apparently, someone anonymously reported seeing Lucy in emotional distress during our last visitation. I remembered Eleanor Kane's possessive touch, James Kane's careful notes. They planned this from the start. The visitation was just theater for their report, which means the school plan is a backup, I finished. They're hitting us from all angles, hoping something sticks. Victoria stood abruptly. I need to call my lawyers, the girls. I'll handle the girls, I said. You focus on the hearing. But when I returned to the guest house, I found it empty. A note on the kitchen table made my heart stop. Going to get breakfast with Grandma Eleanor. She surprised us at drop-off. Back soon, Lucy. Below it, in Emily's messy handwriting, don't worry, Dad. Lucy's grandma seems nice. My hands shook as I called David. The Kanes hadn't just found our weakness. They'd walked right through the front door of the school and taken it. Get Victoria, I said when he answered. The Kanes have the girls, and I think I know why they really wanted those school records. Because what better way to prove a mother unfit than to show she couldn't even keep her child safe at school? And what better leverage than having both girls before the emergency hearing? The game had changed, and now we were playing for keeps. The next hour was chaos. Victoria's security team mobilized while she called in every favor she had with local law enforcement. I stood in the school's front office, watching security footage with David, my heart pounding. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications to catch the next part of this intense story as it unfolds. There, David pointed to the screen. The footage showed Eleanor Kane approaching the girls in the school's drop-off zone. Her smile was warm, grandmother-like, as she bent to speak to them. Lucy hesitated, but Emily, sweet, trusting Emily, smiled back. The next frame showed them climbing into a black SUV. How did this happen? Victoria's voice cracked as she joined us. We had protocols, security. They used our own rules against us, David explained grimly. Eleanor Kane was on the approved family list from the visitation order. The school had no reason to stop her. My phone buzzed. Sarah. I stepped away to answer, dreading the conversation. Mark? Her voice was tight with panic. The school just called. Emily never made it to class. I know. I had to force the words out. Sarah, I'm so sorry. The Kanes. The who? Mark, what's happening? Where is our daughter? Before I could respond, Victoria touched my arm. Let me, she said, taking the phone. Mrs. Reynolds, this is Victoria Chen. Please listen carefully. A car is already on its way to pick you up. We're going to find the girls, but I need you to trust us right now. While Victoria explained the situation to Sarah, David pulled me aside. We've got a hit on the SUV's license plate. They're heading north on the interstate. The Kane estate, I realized. They're taking them to Richard and Eleanor's house, which is exactly what we can't prove without compromising our surveillance, David said frustratingly. They're smart. They'll claim Eleanor was taking the girls for breakfast with Lucy's grandparents, something completely allowed under the visitation order. Unless... An idea struck me. Emily wasn't part of that order. They had no right to take her. Victoria, finishing her call with Sarah, caught the end of our conversation. We can use that. In fact, her eyes lit up with a dangerous gleam. We're going to use everything. Within minutes, Victoria's plan was in motion. While her legal team prepared for the emergency hearing, now just hours away, David's security team tracked the SUV. Sarah arrived, pale but determined, and Victoria quickly brought her into the strategy. They think they can use our children, Against us, Victoria said, her voice hard. They're about to learn how wrong they are. The Kane estate was exactly what you'd expect. A sprawling mansion set behind iron gates, old money oozing from every manicured hedge and carved column. By the time we arrived, police cars had already surrounded the property, their lights flashing against the morning sun. James Kane met us at the gate, his lawyer's smile firmly in place. "This is quite unnecessary," he said smoothly. "The girls are simply having breakfast with their grandparents, as per the visitation order." "Which only applies to Lucy." Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite her fear. "You had no right to take my daughter." "Miss Emily came willingly." Eleanor Kane appeared behind her son, still playing the doting grandmother. "We would never dream of forcing," Sarah asked, watching Victoria field questions about the case. "This part is," I said, "but we've still got work to do." That work began immediately. Victoria threw herself into restructuring her company's leadership, ensuring she could spend more time at home. The guest house underwent renovations, expanding to better accommodate both girls during my custody weeks. Even David's security protocols evolved, becoming more about protection than surveillance. But the biggest changes were more subtle. They happened in quiet moments, like the Sunday morning 2 weeks after the hearing, when I found Victoria in our kitchen, attempting to make pancakes with the girls. "Mom, that's not how Dad does it," Lucy giggled, flour smudged on her cheek. "You have to wait for the bubbles before you flip them." "Yeah," Emily chimed in, ever the supportive friend. "And you forgot the chocolate chips." Victoria, her designer clothes protected by an apron that read "World's Okayest Cook," a gift from the girls, looked completely out of her element. But she was smiling, really smiling, in a way I'd never seen before. "Well then," she said, handing the spatula to Lucy, "you'll have to teach me." I watched from the doorway as Lucy showed her mother how to make the perfect pancake, Emily offering running commentary. The scene was so normal, so peaceful, it made my throat tight. "They're good for each other," Sarah said softly, coming up beside me. She'd started joining us for Sunday breakfasts, part of our new expanded family routine. All of them. She was right. Lucy had bloomed under the combined attention of her mother and our makeshift family. Emily had gained confidence, proud of her role in helping her friend. And Victoria. Victoria had learned that being a successful mother didn't mean being a perfect one. The changes rippled outward. At school, other parents began approaching me, curious about our unusual family arrangement. The story spread. Not the sensational version the media had tried to sell, but the real one, about two families becoming something more. One evening, as I helped the girls with their homework, Lucy looked up from her math book with a serious expression. "Dad?" she said, then caught herself. "I mean, Mr. Reynolds." "Dad is fine, sweetheart," I assured her, my heart warming. At the slip. It wasn't the first time she'd called me that, but it meant something different now. "Do you think the Kanes will ever try again to take me away?" I set down my pen, choosing my words carefully. "I think they learned something important, that real family isn't about control or ownership. It's about love and choice." "Like how you chose to help me when I fell from the tree?" she asked. "And how Emily chose to be my friend?" Exactly like that. Emily, who had been pretending not to listen, looked up. "And how Mom chose to let us stay here, even when she was scared." "Your mom is very brave," I agreed, "just like both of you." Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Victoria joined me on the back porch. We'd developed a habit of ending our days there, sharing the quiet moments after the chaos. "Lucy called me Dad today," I told her. Victoria smiled, unsurprised. She's been practicing it in her head for weeks, asking Emily if she thought it would be okay. "And you're okay with it?" She turned to face me, her expression soft in the porch light. "Mark, you've been more of a father to her in these past months than Alexander Kane ever was. You've earned that title, not through biology or legal rights, but through every choice you've made. The weight of those choices, from stopping to help a falling girl to standing against the Kanes, settled around me like a comfortable blanket. Sometimes the biggest changes in life come from the smallest moments of courage." 1 year after the Kane incident, we gathered in the backyard of what was now truly our home. The autumn air was crisp, leaves dancing on the breeze as we celebrated Lucy's 9th birthday. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and check out 2 more incredible stories on your screen right now. The party was everything a 9-year-old could dream of, but with touches that made it uniquely ours. Security teams disguised as party staff kept a watchful eye, while David, now more family than employee, manned the grill. Sarah chatted with Victoria by the dessert table, their former awkwardness long since transformed into genuine friendship. The girls had insisted on a family and friends-only celebration. No elaborate society parties or business connections, just the people who mattered most. Looking around at the gathered guests, I realized how much our definition of family had expanded. "Dad!" Lucy called, running over with Emily close behind. Both girls wore matching party dresses. Lucy's blue, Emily's green. "Can we show everyone our surprise now?" The surprise had been weeks in the making. A special presentation they'd prepared with their art teacher, Anna Martinez. Victoria joined us as the girls set up their easel, curiosity bright in her eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," Emily announced, "with theatrical flair, we present our family tree." They unveiled a large canvas, and my breath caught. It wasn't a traditional family tree with straight lines and formal connections. Instead, they'd painted a massive oak tree, like the one Lucy had fallen from, with branches interweaving in complex patterns. Photos and names were connected not by biology, but by love. Victoria and Lucy at the center, connected to me and Emily, then spreading out to include Sarah, David, Anna, and everyone else who'd become part of our extended family. "See?" Lucy explained, pointing to different sections. "The branches show how we're all connected, not by blood, but by heart." Victoria knelt beside her daughter, eyes glistening. "It's beautiful, sweetheart, just like our family." The moment was interrupted by the arrival of an unexpected guest. Harold Fletcher, now working as Victoria's head of cybersecurity, hurried over with an urgent expression. "Ms. Chen," he said, quietly, "we've received a letter from the Kanes." The party continued around us as Victoria read the letter, her expression unreadable. Finally, she handed it to me. "Dear Victoria and Lucy, time has a way of providing perspective. This past year has taught us much about family, pride, and the cost of putting power before love. While we cannot undo our actions, we can acknowledge our mistakes. Lucy deserves the family she has chosen, one built on love rather than obligation. We respect that choice and ask only that someday, when she's ready, she might allow us to prove we've learned from our errors. With sincere regret, Richard and Eleanor Kane." "What do you think?" Victoria asked softly. I watched Lucy and Emily, showing their artwork to the other guests, their faces glowing with joy. "I think," I said carefully, "that forgiveness is something that can't be rushed. When Lucy's older, she can decide if she wants them in her life." Victoria nodded, tucking the letter away. "You know, a year ago I thought I had to choose between being a successful CEO and a good mother. I thought I had to do everything alone. And now?" She smiled, watching our unusual, beautiful family celebrate together. "Now I know that strength isn't about standing alone. It's about letting people in, letting them help, letting them love." As the party wound down, the girls convinced everyone to gather around their family tree for a photo. I stood with Emily on one side and Lucy on the other. Victoria beside her daughter, Sarah next to Emily, David and Anna, and all the others finding their places. "Ready?" the photographer called. "1, 2... Wait!" Lucy interrupted. "I want to say something." She looked around at all of us, her eyes bright. "A year ago, I fell from a tree and thought it was the worst day of my life. But it wasn't. It was the best, because it gave me the family I always wanted but didn't know I needed." Emily hugged her friend. "The best accidents are the ones that turn into miracles." The wisdom of children never ceases to amaze me. As the camera flashed, capturing our unconventional family in a moment of pure joy, I thought about all the choices that had led us here. One simple act of kindness, reaching out to catch a falling child, had created ripples that transformed all our lives. We've learned that family isn't defined by blood or law, but by the people who show up, not just for the big moments, but for all the small ones in between. The ones who choose to stay, to fight, to love, even when it's hard. Lucy and Emily still have their treehouse, though it's much safer than the original oak tree. On quiet evenings, you can hear their laughter floating down as they share secrets and dreams. Victoria has found balance, leading her company while never missing a school play or soccer game. Sarah has become an integral part of our extended family, proving that divorce doesn't have to mean division. As for me, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, helping to raise two remarkable girls, surrounded by a family that defies definition but fills my heart. Sometimes the best stories don't end with dramatic battles or grand gestures. Sometimes they end with quiet moments of connection, with children's laughter, with the simple knowledge that love in all its forms is the greatest adventure of all. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. Remember to like and subscribe for more incredible true stories that remind us of the extraordinary power of ordinary kindness.